Hey everyone, I'm gonna do a short stream today where I head out for a funeral, so that's fun. Um, but yeah, I wanted to talk about a couple things in the news that have kind of been updated and go through it together with people. I'm trying to stay informed on this. Epstein's emails are being released rapidly. These are not the whole Epstein files. The House has, and Senate have not voted on that yet, even though there is going to be a vote next week. That has been confirmed. But who knows? That could always go downhill. But for now, at least, the Epstein estate has released a lot of emails they've had, right? So the presumably the Department of Justice has like everything. 'Cause they've done an actual investigation and are sitting on actual stuff and the worst of it. And the Epstein estate is releasing some emails that, at the very least, like imply like there's a lot going on and there's more, and you should be asking these questions and keep looking. Like pretty clear signifiers. And so more come out. I don't know if this article has all of them, um, but it's rough. There's a lot of horrific stuff in here, and it's seeming more and more like there's open corruption. They conspire together. These were a bunch of creepy men who were friends. I mean, these are Donald Trump's friends, and it seems like they knew. Seems like they all participated and they knew a lot, far more than they ever said. We're gonna go through it. If there's not no like necessarily smoking gun like definite proof of a crime in here, but it's enough that like, oh, you should want to see the rest. And that is what the vote in Congress will be, and the vote's supposed to be next week to release everything, to release all of it. Um, let's see if there's like full records of this going through. Um, there's some good summaries in here, but first, like there are just some pictures that are quotes I've seen and excerpts from some of these specific emails because there's a ton. Like it's not you can sit down and read a list. There's a ton. Like this is what journalists are for, kind of digging through and sifting through. From Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell, 2011. I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. When I read this whole email, the implication to me is that like Donald Trump specifically hasn't snitched yet, and also implicated him, and Donald Trump was keeping his mouth shut. So like he's the one who wasn't flipping, which shows loyalty from Donald Trump. That Donald Trump doesn't want to implicate himself. He's the one who wouldn't talk. So Jeffrey Epstein could trust him to cover up pedophilia. From Jeffrey Epstein to Sultan bin Salam, never heard of him. The grammar and spelling in all of these is terrible. These are not smart men. He talks to many people. He tells each one something different. This is in 2018. Do you know him? I heard he is close to Trump. Excuse me. From Michael Wolff to Jeffrey Epstein. There's an opportunity to come forward this week and talk about Trump in such a way that could garner you great sympathy and help finish him. Interested? It's in 2016. The more I see about this, the more it seems like all these people knew, they conspired. There's lots of discussion whether or not to turn on Trump or to try and use him. They weren't really sure. It seems like their friendships and relationships extended far more recently than you'd think, like after Trump is in office. It's bad. Um, in death, Jeffrey Epstein became a permanent fixture of American political life. This is an article in the New York Times by Sam Sifton. In life, the financier eventually charged with trafficking girls hosted parties for rich and powerful people. President Trump socialized with him and sent him a bespoke birthday greeting shaped like a naked lady. It was not a lady, it's a girl. Trump denies he made it. He signed it. Many liberal luminaries were in Epstein's orbit too. They like to do a weird both sides thing in the New York Times now. It was look into the ownership of like mainstream news sources. It's all owned by wealth and serfs wealth. The curious nation wondered why. What did Epstein offer them? Did he have anything on them? New majorities in both parties think there must be something. A majority in the House of Representatives want whatever it is to come out. This both siding is strange for the New York Times. They've been bought out and have been doing lots of both siding. Lots of news sources have. Um, this idea of like, oh, the liberal media is long past because it's really not a majority in both parties. It's a majority overall. It's a majority of Democrats. It is a few exceptional Republicans. Republicans largely are supporting and protecting this, which is despicable. Every now and then, nuggets of news emerge. In July, the Justice Department put out a report saying there was no Epstein client list. The Times reported this past summer about his Manhattan lair, and this fall about the bankers who served him after he'd been convicted of a sex crime. And yesterday, Democrats released 3 emails in which Epstein talked with others about Trump, suggesting the president may know more about the sex trafficking than he acknowledged. Hours later, Republicans dropped 23,000 more pages of documents from Epstein's estate. It led to a mad scramble in our newsroom. It's hard to tell to what extent the Republicans dumping more information was an attempt to help or to just flood the zone with misinformation. Because Democrats are very deliberately like, here's 3 emails, here's enough you can actually read and look at, and not lead to this kind of wild Mad Hat speculation, which is what Republicans like to do. It's a tactic from Steve Bannon, who's the creepy old man and an architect of the mainstreaming of the alt-right. His whole thing is just, throw too much controversy at the wall for people to parse. So that's the strategy we're seeing from Republicans here. But that's not a good strategy. Republicans released the documents around 10:30 a.m. They weren't in chronological or sequential order, and exchanges between people were frequently not located together. They were a mess. Top editors in Washington and New York, including Kirsten Danis, the editor who runs our investigative team, launched journalists at the cache. They searched the haystack for needles, pulling out what seemed most interesting and important. Engineers and experts in artificial intelligence downloaded the documents to make them searchable. Visual journalists and designers brought them to life. Uh, okay, well, thing about advertising the New York Times and their use of technology. We still have a lot to look at and don't totally know how much of the universe we have seen, Kristen said. But here's some of what the emails have revealed so far. Please note, the documents are riddled with typos, which we have preserved when we quote from them. Yeah, this is the terrible grammar and spelling of not smart men. 1. Epstein's emails suggested he was close with Trump. In 2011, in an email to his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, he wrote, I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted victim name, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Donald Trump spent hours at Epstein's house with one of Epstein's known victims. People repeatedly emailed Epstein asking for advice in dealing with Trump, but he wasn't always forthcoming. In one email, Epstein advised, Donald is close to no one. He talks to many people. He tells each one something different. This is pathetic. The weird truth of this that we're seeing pretty clearly is that Donald Trump didn't have friends and doesn't have friends. Frankly, what it appears to me through all of Donald Trump's life, the closest thing Donald Trump has ever had to a best friend is Jeffrey Epstein. Like, he doesn't hang out with people. There are bad pictures of Donald Trump hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. He doesn't hang out with anyone else. He's never hung out with anyone else. This seems to be his like strongest social connection. This is his like ride or die best buddy. And also, Jeffrey Epstein died under Donald Trump's watch. Ghislaine Maxwell has been moved to a low security prison where she's getting special treatment under Donald Trump's watch. Hi, Ryan Grill. Thanks for discovering my channel. Um, in an email to the author Michael Wolff in 2019, Epstein wrote of Trump, of course he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Epstein wrote of Trump, of course he knew about the girls. But Epstein also frequently disparaged Trump. This is sad. This is really sad. The closest thing Donald Trump has ever had to a friend, an awful, evil person himself, still did not speak highly of Donald Trump. In 2018, during Trump's first impeachment inquiry, Epstein wrote, "You see, I know how dirty Donald is." When a former Obama administration official emailed Epstein and called Trump so gross, Epstein replied, "Worse in real life and up close." Wolf seems to have served as an advisor to Epstein. Some of Wolf's emails suggest that Epstein could have contradicted Trump's claims or held back in exchange for a favor. In 2015, before a presidential debate on CNN, Epstein asked what they would want Trump to say about his relationship with the financier. Wolf wrote, "If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency." Wolf also said Epstein could use information about Trump to shift attention off himself. In 2016, before a book about Epstein was released, Wolf told him, quote, "You do need an immediate counter-narrative to the book. I believe Trump offers an ideal opportunity." 4. Epstein chatted casually with a wide network of powerful people. He gave Lawrence Summers, the former Treasury Secretary, advice about his interactions with a woman. Quote, "No whining showed strength," Epstein wrote. He talked politics with Steve Bannon, a former Trump advisor. In 2018, after Epstein invited Bannon to Europe, Bannon replied, "This is a crazed jihad against you. I've never seen anything like it, and I've seen a lot." When you hear these kinds of people complain and conspire and use language like, oh, they're scared of the woke people and jihad, this weird Islamophobia, it's this like victim whining, and this is where you see it, right? Like this is they're not serious people. These are not serious threats. They're whining that the woke left is coming for their pedophile ring, effectively. The fallout. Trump has acknowledged that he had a friendship with Epstein, but he said the two had a falling out in the mid 2000s, years before Epstein was arrested. And he has dismissed the investigation into his ties to Epstein as a hoax, which he did again yesterday. The House now has the support it needs to force a vote on the Justice Department releasing the remaining Epstein files. That vote is set for next week, but Trump has been pressuring Republicans in Congress to block the action. Even if the bill were to pass the House, it would have to be approved by the Republican-controlled Senate and signed by Trump, who would almost certainly veto it. This is like going to probably happen, and this is the thing I think will end the Trump presidency. If the House and Senate can pass the bill, Trump would veto it. Here's the interesting thing, right? Most Republicans have been bought into like backing Trump no matter what. The Republican Party is running on this cult of personality, even though a lot of them don't even believe in it. It's just this practical, like if you show fealty, if you show loyalty, and you never question, um, you will be allowed, even if you're fully incompetent in your job, which is, I mean, criminal. Like it's bipartisan. Like I don't care. Like even if you have more like conservative, like Republican, like we should do this on the economy or this more. The fact that you can be shit at your job as long as you just follow recklessly and like glaze the president is bad. Like incompetence is incompetence. If you care about any of these jobs working, this is not it. This is not how a government should work, and it's terrifying. But a lot of the pressure is cracking. Donald Trump is becoming brand toxic. The economy is bad and getting worse. And because Donald Trump spent the year clearly like campaigning on affordability, and now he spent like his time in office um, fucking it up and doing nothing, he's becoming more of a detriment than a benefit to anyone looking to run for office in 2026. And we're starting to see splits, right? That's why Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to flip as visibly and loudly as she can because she kind of sees the writing on the wall and her hope. She's not like a good person. She doesn't morally change her mind, but Trump is on his way out, whether he dies of old age and health issues, which she might know more about being up closer, or even just like this is going to take him down. So like there's going to be like splinter factions coming off as everyone then tries to loot this dying administration for their own gains because people do not believe in JD Vance and he does not have what it takes to hold that coalition together. So it's not worth like even backing him, right? So the Epstein vote is going to be interesting because even though only a few Republicans signed the discharge petition to say we're going to vote about the Epstein files, now that it's going to happen, if this were to pass, it's a prisoner's dilemma situation because um, if these files get released and these emails are already starting to release it and create that pressure, uh, anyone who has supported this, like supported this cover up, will be on the wrong side of history. It will tank you. The fact that you'd be willing to like back a failed president who like trashed the economy and is a pedophile and is covering up for a pedophile and has for years is so bread fast. Like no one wants to be on that. So once it actually comes to a vote, if they realize that there are enough votes to get the files released, then anyone who actually isn't happy about Trump and has kept it a facade of support is going to break down. Like it's the floodgates are cracking. It's just logistically like it's just bad. Um, it's not a good strategy to back this horse right now anymore. And we're going to see like a lot of the Republicans who will kind of say and do whatever just because they care about personal power or like their own ass, they're just trying to run campaigns and like get a paycheck and not even really govern that much. Um, it's it's bad. And Trump is trying to get people to stop this, right? Even like this vote with the petition, and the petition has passed. There is going to be a vote next week, but before the one representative Goblin, I forget her name exactly, was sworn in, um, Donald Trump was putting pressure on Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert. They called Lauren Boebert into a meeting with like Casper television with people, begging her to like take her name off the petition so this vote wouldn't come through. And she didn't cave, which is interesting. When like Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace aren't caving, we've hit a tipping point here. They're treating him like a lame duck president. They're treating him like a lame duck president because he kind of is, which is like a shockingly short, fast time frame for that to happen. But that is what it is. So now that this vote is happening, I don't think they're backing down. If they wanted to back down, they already would have backed down. But now, if anything, they're going to stay the same, or there's going to be more people for it, and there should be more people for it. I mean, what do you mean by caving? Because like Nance and Boebert are they already signed the petition to like release the Epstein files like months ago in September. And there were a few women, like Republican women, who I think were like morally disgusted by it, like Marjorie Taylor Greene did. So they states their position, right? And before the petition was released, before the woman was sworn in, the Trump administration begged like Boebert and Mace to take their names off the petition so there wouldn't be a vote, which proves like they know they're fucked, right? You wouldn't do that if you didn't care. If you weren't in the files, you say go for it. Um, yeah. So luckily, like they said, no, we're not taking your names off the petition. We're going to have this. So now it's at 218. There's going to be a vote next week to release the files. There's a lot of rumors that the Republican Party is about to crack. Lots of people who see Trump as a lame duck and are thinking of splitting and like getting their own bag and setting up their own reelection campaigns. And they don't really like, you know, they're not actually invested in Trump. They just thought it was like a useful brand to ride the coattails of. That's no longer a good opportunity. That's crashing down. So yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to, I think, lead that faction a lot. And there's going to be, I'm pretty sure, a lot of Republicans who crack. So we'll see. Um, and it might be big. It might be small. It might be big. We really don't know right now. It's chaos. Currently, this whole week now and through next week, there are going to be like two efforts, right? One is going to be the Marjorie Taylor Greene types saying, come with me. Let's set up the next like Republican Party, basically. Let's turn on Trump. Make that the start of this. Because when this goes down in the history books, they want to be seen very publicly as the faction who didn't stand for this. There may even be like some more selfishness. I'm curious how JD Vance is going to handle this. Have you noticed JD Vance, who has been super visible the past few weeks, has shut up And it's not that JD Vance doesn't mind commenting on stuff. When like the Nazi group chats leaked, JD Vance, not even asked like about anything, unprompted, went out and tried like defending it and excusing it, right? Which is weird. But JD Vance has shut up on this. He's silent. He's dropped out of view. Um, Another weird thing that I want to talk about next is Thune. Have you heard of John Thune? Speaker Mike Johnson is like in charge of the House of Representatives. On the Senate side, who's in charge of the Senate Republicans? It's John Thune. And while Mike Johnson is everywhere and very visible and has to make excuses, Thune has this mysterious, creepy force. He stayed out of the spotlight. So first, I just want you to see a picture. This is John Thune. This is what he actually looks like, by the way. You probably don't know that, and that's very deliberate. I think it's very deliberate that he doesn't want to be seen all that much. So I think because he doesn't want you to know what he looks like, you should know what he looks like. When there was the bill to reopen the government, and there's an article about Thune, which doesn't even have a picture of him in it. Um, it was meant to just be a bill to reopen the government, right? Thune snuck in at the last minute a provision to that bill to let senators sue for phone record seizure. This is some of the most criminal evil shit I've ever seen. And as much as like it's easy and kind of fun to hate on like Chuck Schumer or whatever for being weak, like this is his Republican equivalent. And the extent to which he is crazy and evil cannot be understated. Like, I mean, it's easy to talk about like, oh, Chuck Schumer's a weak leader, but as soon as you see anything that like the Senate Republicans do, oh my God, these are the most evil, vile people I have ever seen in my life. And should be a bipartisan like condemn this. This is so not acceptable. So in that bill, by the way, just to open the government at the last minute, they slipped something into that bill because it's a very big bill because it has to include like a short-term budget for kind of everything. You know, it's a big, complicated thing. And they assumed based on the talks, like, yeah, this is what this is going to be. We're just going to do it. We're not really getting much out of the shutdown. We're just going to sign this. Um, those those seven Democratic senators and one independent senator signed on to this and didn't realize they didn't read through that soon traitorous piece of shit snuck something in. Senate Republicans secured a provision in the bipartisan shutdown ending government funding package that could award senators hundreds of thousands of dollars for having their phone records collected without their knowledge as part of a Biden era investigation. That legislative language came directly from Senate Majority Leader John Thune. This piece of shit, okay? In an interview Monday evening, Senator Ted Cruz, Republican from Texas, who claims he was one of the lawmakers to have his data subpoenaed as part of a former special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into President Donald Trump's efforts to subvert the 2020 election, said Thune was responsible for the inclusion of the provision. Leader Thune inserted that in the bill to provide real teeth to the prohibition on the Department of Justice targeting senators, Cruz said. A person close with direct knowledge of the legislation's negotiations, granted anonymity to speak candidly, confirmed Thune oversaw the inclusion of the provision. It was tucked into the legislative branch spending measure for fiscal year 2026, part of a three-bill minibus of appropriations measures that senators were set to vote on Monday night, alongside a continuing resolution to fund the government through January 30th. The House is expected to clear the package for President Donald Trump's signature as early as Wednesday. Yeah, this is happening. The government's reopening. Thune's involvement is notable as the revelations that Smith collected phone records for several Senate Republicans has emboldened GOP lawmakers, prompting them to deflect Democrats' accusations of weaponization in the Trump Justice Department and claim that President Joe Biden's DOJ was looking to target conservatives. Excuse me. Um, G2 is what else? I'm going to see like the description of what it actually does. The provision states that electronic services providers must notify a Senate office if the provider receives a request to disclose the data from that senator or senator's office. Moreover, the legislative language stipulates that the provider cannot be barred from notifying the Senate office under a court order, though the notification may be delayed in the event that the senator in question is under criminal investigation. Chief James Chief Judge James Boasberg of the District of Columbia District Court approved measures that would have precluded phone providers from notifying the senators that their data was requested by federal law enforcement officers. Lawmakers have since renewed calls for his impeachment over the move, viewing him as a hostile member of fronts to Trump's agenda. This portion of the legislative branch appropriations bill also appears to provide a cash bonus to those senators who are singled out by Smith's probe. If the provision included in the bill is violated, the senator can sue the federal government, and if the lawmaker succeeds in that case, the person will be awarded $500,000 or more for each violation by the government. Here's what that means. If these senators are being investigated for potential crimes, and they're like, hey, we're going to look at your phone records to see if you were like texting some heinous shit, and there's evidence you were planning this shit. They just passed a law that, yeah, and they backdated it. So this applies retroactively, right? Um, hey, actually, you're legally obligated to give us a heads up before you can do that and look at my phone records. You know, see, what would you do if you had evidence in your text and call history that you were connected to like crime, to like white collar federal crime, and then they had to give you a notification before law enforcement got to your phone records? Wouldn't you start deleting everything you could? Wouldn't you know to run immediately to your lawyer's house and start planning and hiding stuff and destroying stuff? Like, wouldn't having a heads up only be useful if you wanted to disrupt that investigation and get away with more awful stuff? Who does this help? Like, can you imagine if like thieves got a heads up that like the cops were coming? There's going to be an investigation, and we could just start like, what would you do? Like, that's it's incredible, right? And because it goes back, right? And these people have been in like one or two investigations. This is just a kickback. This is now law saying, hey, all of these Republicans who were investigated for their connections to crime and election interference can just sue the government for $500,000 or $1 million. It happened like twice. Confirmed, like this is retroactive, of taxpayer money. They could just get that. That's like their reward for doing a crime. They're retroactively changing a law, like it's retroactive. I was saying, hey, by the way, because of stuff that already happened, so it's guaranteed. They are they could just get $1 million of taxpayer money. This is corruption. This is waste, fraud, and abuse. Yeah. Hey, we think you might have murdered someone. We're gonna come by next week. It's disgusting. And in the same way, like some Senate Democrats and independents kind of like, seem to kind of flake without telling the House Democrats for the shutdown. This, by the way, was not communicated among the Republicans. Thune just did this last minute. John Thune just slipped this in without telling anybody. And this is like why, like, hey, we just want to reopen the government. Like that was the whole kind of narrative. Like we're just gonna whatever. There's not gonna be any wins. This is like a loss. Like this became like now in terms of and it's just a dick move. Like it's corruption. It's just vile evil. And Republicans said, don't worry about it. We're just gonna reopen the government anyway. And then I don't know. Then we can just pass another bill on doing it, which is weird. Like why do it in the first place? Unacceptable. But of course, Republicans all still voted for it, so it passed anyway. Um, but they didn't tell Mike Johnson. Of course, they didn't tell Mike Johnson. So this is bad. And there are even some Republicans who are like, "Wow, that was really messed up and evil. Like, what the hell?" Um, so Speaker Mike Johnson said he told Senate Majority Leader John Thune he strongly disagreed with the Senate GOP's inclusion of a provision in which the government funding package allowing senators to sue if their electronic records are obtained without their knowledge. I don't think that was a smart thing to do, Johnson told reporters Wednesday night. Of Thune, Johnson added, I think he regretted the way it was done, and we had an honest conversation about that. So this is like a softer support. They're seeing like the Democratic kind of split, but there is some fractioning among Republicans as well already. The Epstein files are going to be this full like free for all of party control and different factions vying for power because Trump, like it or not, regardless of your politics, it is like just obvious right now. Everyone, including Republicans, are treating him like a lame duck president. The Trump administration, Trump is no longer the main character. He's no longer being centered. He's not like making these rules and decisions and leading the way. It's just a bunch of like corrupt goons vying for power. and just trying to loot what they can and get away with whatever they can. So sometimes you have like crazy fascists and bigots, or just like weird, creepy, obsessed haters who are just trying to like pass an agenda to hurt specific types of people. Sometimes you have people like Thune here, who's just like, we just want money. This is corrupt, like it's looting basically. It's just looting. Like they're just smashing windows and taking TVs. They're just taking taxpayer money. Um, you have some people vying for power, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think actually believes in Jewish space lasers, but she saw Trump's brand. She saw how over the top he was, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene just realized she could start saying crazy stuff. And then like she's not been a senator, or she's not been a representative in the House like very long in the grand scheme of things. But she's already like one of the most famous, visible representatives, right? So that's the game she knew how to play. And now she's flipping. So now she's trying to like be like, hey, look, leftists support me, and trying to like pull together a new coalition of like the kind of populist like MAGA base, and then like augment that with some people on the left to kind of go against the like Heritage Foundation, like Republican establishment. Um, um, so like it's chaos right now, and they're starting to fight and they're starting to argue. Not very much, but I think they should stop kind of trusting each other, and I think we're going to start to see that. Like I think Thune is a very much a real politic in this for power and money. A lot of people traditionally who have like real power and money like to lay low. They don't like to be visible. It's gauche. Like the Elon Musk thing of I'm going to be in front of the camera all the time is gauche. That's atypical. And also, like, it's frankly, if your goal is accruing money and power, um, people don't tend to, that doesn't tend to work out very long once people get out the guillotines. And you want to lay low. There are lots of like rich billionaire families we just don't know about. We just don't see them. Like, you could probably look them up, but you would find very little information. It's suspicious and very telling to me that Thune is never giving interviews. He's never in front of cameras. We don't really see him as a main character compared to Johnson. Mike Johnson very much comes from this. Mike Johnson. There's a picture of him somewhere in one of these. Yeah, Mike Johnson here. He's always in the camera, right? Mike Johnson, thing. He's supposedly like very like Christian religious. That's his background. So that's like more. He's in that kind of evangelical pocket more. He thinks this is about like imposing his weird ideological agenda. That's what he's in it for. And he's desperately now like having to run cover for every awful thing Trump does. And you can see the guilt on his face. Like he's sold out because he doesn't feel he has another way. But I think that Mike Johnson has a weird, creepy ideological bend into this. I also think he's probably Mike Johnson does like a adult video content tracker like usage tracker, like kind of app program thing with his like son that he started when the son was like a minor, and then they would have to like hold each other accountable so we're not watching too much adult video content, and then sharing that with each other, which is creepy. That's like kind of grooming to me. That's breaking down a bar. Like there are some things that are not appropriate to talk about with your son and to bond over. That's creepy. That shows a certain like where his values lie, where his values do not lie. Like what where he doesn't creepy. Mike Johnson also took his daughter to a purity ball when she was a teenager, which is a ritualistic deep South tradition kind of thing, where it's like a play pretend like a prom night or like a wedding night of young girls with their dads to symbolize their beautiful virginity, and then they make a promise to their dads, like you would a wedding vow, that they're not going to have sex with anyone, and they're just going to be daddy's little girl until they get married, which is also scary. If you want to build like good, healthy, stable relationships, don't feel like you have to hold back all of your like attraction and will and everything until you get married, and then you're legally bound in to like some guy you don't know, and you like that's so creepy and bad. Like that leads to entrapment to so many domestic abusive relationships. It's just a bad idea, and it's grooming. And like traditionally, you look back in that like deep South culture, what those kinds of events would be, these pretty balls and stuff. It's you'd have a bunch of old, creepy, rich men marrying their daughters off to each other, not to each other's sons, but like to each other. So it's bad. So like Mike Johnson is already like he's shown these kind of like very religious, like deep South, kind of creepy, kind of pedophile sympathetic tendencies and ideas, which I think are frankly pretty common among like the kind of religious right. And Mike Johnson has been the public face and the fall guy and the lead apologist for everything this administration has done, and the Epstein files are coming. I don't think he necessarily likes all of that, but I think he's going to screw it, and he just has to sync with that ship. a little bit. Thune does not seem ideological to me at all. Thune is willing to kind of defang the hey, we just wanted to open the government clean argument for something he thought he could get away with, which was like giving Republicans a lot of money, like taxpayer money. This is the kind of creep who's just like, this is real politic, right? Like, if they needed to commit human rights violations to like win votes, like pass some abhorrent legislation that hurts people, like with the ICE stuff, I think he'd do it because like that benefits John Thune at the end of the day. That's kind of like his vibe more. Some people will be evil because they're only looking to maximize their own personal gain, and that is much more his brand. He's not taking any like negative PR reputation from a lot of what he's doing. Because even though I've seen his name in articles, you don't see him. You never see him. He's like this creepy shadow looming over everything, and he's just like creepy, weird, piercing blue eyes. I think of like the billboard in The Great Gatsby. That's like his vibe. He's just like looming in the background. So like while Schumer is taking all of this hate for like, oh, they're trying to reopen the government, Thune has all the Republicans saying, hey, let's just reopen the government and screw ACA subsidies. Like Republicans are worse at this. They're just evil. It doesn't care. Like this is a creepy evil man, and you should be scared of him. Mike Johnson, I think, is like complicit in evil because he's soft and weak and pathetic and desperate and is way in over his head. Mike Johnson has what I think is going to be like the new traditional mainstream Republican base going forward, which is how do you describe it? Like Mike Johnson? I don't know. This kind of like weak softness, like this JD Vance, Marco Rubio, even like Ron DeSantis, Mike Johnson. There's this kind of this like pathetic. They will apologize for and do whatever their rich funders tell them to do. Vance was once a socialist and became confused ingredient, then he turned into a fascist. So the pain of people then became confused. Yeah, JD Vance comes from like a bad home where his mom was like had problems, I believe, with pills in kind of Appalachia, and that will mess anyone up, right? And I think a lot of people who come from like a bad environment like that will see more value in any window to success to like break that cycle of not like what they had. And I think Vance, honestly, is kind of a pathetic, sad person and is willing to do whatever it takes, take whatever opportunity he has. Vance has 180 on like all of his politics. He will jump however high Peter Thiel tells him to jump. He will 180 all of his language on Trump. He will now try to, failing at it miserably, appeal to like young men. And like that's kind of the future of the base that he sees and is trying to go for, but he doesn't know how to talk to them. He doesn't realize that he's a lolcow and he thinks he's a meme lord. Um, and he's going to like up the misogyny. He's just desperate for people to like him. He's desperate for power and money. And he's very weak and insecure. Like, I don't know. I'm worried that JD Vance could absolutely be manipulated by any big interests. There's just kind of a sad desperation for that man. So there's different kind of fault lines and strengths and weaknesses in the Republican Party right now that I think are more interesting to keep an eye on than just like the Democrats. Because the Democrats, we are seeing kind of a split between like progressives and the establishment. But luckily now, like the zeitgeist has shifted to the side of the progressives. And even with frankly a few establishment tweaks, enough establishment people get the gist right now that they need to get on board. That's really what it is. Like if you need to be more moderate in your area, be more moderate. But there needs to be some unifying vision. After the shutdown ended, it was really refreshing to see the Democratic Party, for the most part, pretty much come together and say like, hey, look, whether it was like this had to happen. It was not going to like work out. We needed like to concede at some point, or whether these guys went rogue. Um, it was on Schumer just as a leader of a team. He just failed as a leader of a team to kind of organize and keep everyone together. And regardless, like he should resign to kind of take that fault and take that hit for the team. And to see that the sentiment become more widespread gives me like good hope that I think most Democrats in the room kind of understand like the practical what needs to happen right now. Just focus on affordability, get it together. Whereas Republicans are also at a point of division, but whereas Democrats are kind of starting to come together and see what the path forward needs to be, Republicans are about to split up big. I'm worried when the dust settles It's going to be the Groyper populist faction that takes over. We're going to have people like on the ground, like all the podcast bros and the creepy like kick streamers, and maybe so like maybe some of the tech bros, like Elon Musk, I think is in their pocket. Marjorie Taylor Greene will be their leader. Tucker Carlson will be their leader. Then these establishment people who are like just bought and owned by the Heritage Foundation and others are going to kind of sink. Like they feel more relevant and out of touch. They're going back to this. It feels very like 2000s evangelical Republican base. Does that make sense? It's confusion and chaos. Yeah. So you have like the bigots are like, no, we just want to be bigoted, which is not how to. We're not. That's not an adult way to run a government. They don't know how. They just know how to hurt people and they hate everybody. But then like this establishment type who knows, and it's just like actually we just need to uh, cut taxes on anyone who makes money. Does not capture any hearts or minds. Um, they're going to try and force their way into power, like the Mike Johnson types, and try to be rewarded for it. I don't know how that's going to work out. They might control the Congress, whereas the populists may be going for the White House. Here's an interesting article. Epstein offered reporter photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen. Among the more than 20,000 Epstein documents released by the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee on Wednesday are several email exchanges with crazed financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein had in 2015 and 2016 with friends, attorneys, and reporters about the prospect of a Donald Trump presidency. In some instances, Epstein offers suggestions to reporters about leads they might pursue. One notable example is an email conversation between Epstein and then New York Times reporter Landon Thomas Jr. in December 2015. Thomas initiated the exchange on December 8, 2015, with an email to Epstein referring to the 2002 New York Magazine article Thomas had written, in which Trump was quoted calling Epstein a, quote, terrific guy who, quote, likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. Now everyone is coming to me thinking I have juicy info on you and Trump because of this, the reporter wrote, referring to that article. Epstein then replied to Thomas in a series of emails over the next 2 hours, in his typical error-ridden style, first suggesting that Thomas look into Trump's finances before pivoting to more personal subjects. In one email, Epstein writes, would you like photos of Donald Trump and girls in bikinis in my kitchen? Thomas replied, yes. It's unclear whether Epstein possessed such photos or if he ever sent the reporter any photos. In another email, Epstein suggested that reporters, quote, ask my houseman about Donald almost walking through the door, leaving his nose print on the glass as young women were swimming in the pool, and he was so focused he walked straight into the door. ABC News has reached out to the White House about Epstein's claims in the email exchange with the New York Times reporter. The Republican-controlled House Oversight and Government Committee released the thousands of pages of new Epstein documents on Wednesday, after House Democrats released 3 emails in which Epstein discussed Trump. The documents were obtained after the committee subpoenaed the Epstein estate over the summer. And they're just claiming it's like, nothing and it's whatever, it's lies. But I mean, we can see the emails. Like the emails speak for themselves. Carolyn Leverett will lie about anything. In Epstein's exchange with Thomas, New York Times reporter, Epstein sent a link to a feature story about a woman that Epstein claimed had been his girlfriend who later dated Trump. My 20-year-old girlfriend in 93, that after 2 years I gave to Donald, Epstein wrote. That's so creepy. During Trump's first campaign for the presidency, Epstein was also in frequent contact with author Michael Wolff, who was working on a book about Trump. In many messages, Wolff appeared to be encouraging Epstein to speak publicly about his previous relationship with the candidate, noting that many reporters and his political rivals were investigating the issue. The New York Times called me about you and Trump, Wolff told Epstein in February 2015. Also, Hillary campaign thinking deeply. Again, you should consider preempting. In October 2016, after the Access Hollywood tapes had been made public, and just days before the presidential election, Wolff sent Epstein another message with, now could be the time, in the subject line. There's an opportunity you could come forward this week and talk about Trump in such a way that could garner you great sympathy and help finish him. Interested? It's unclear if Epstein responded to that message. Other emails include exchanges Epstein had during Trump's first term in office. So the weird thing about all these emails, first of all, that is good to know, like, this is kind of a mess in a clusterfuck. Because we know a part of Republican strategy is flooding the zone, it's hard to tell whether these Republicans in the Oversight Committee were trying to help or to make it worse. Because they just dropped like a big mess of like 20,000 emails or something like that. Democrats just released three. They were like, okay, clear message to follow. Um, if all the Epstein files get released, it's going to be a bigger version of this, just like a big mess, just everything thrown in. And you have all these news sources who are trying to go through, and luckily they have the time to, they have the resources to, they have the skills to um, go through this like archive and like find all the emails and pick out the ones that are relevant and like try to put together the story because it's a bunch of random conversations between different parties. Um, and they're all kind of out of order and scrambled. So like there's several instances like it's unclear like whether they follow this up. And also if you're like, imagine it's Epstein and a reporter talking, and then Epstein says like, "Hey reporter, I'm gonna give you these photos that would like be smoking gun evidence of Donald Trump with like naked underage girls." Um, if there was that handoff, that's the kind of thing like I don't know, like would you do send that as an email attachment or would you like meet up at a parking garage somewhere and hand them over in like a folder? So it's not clear whether there's like follow-up emails that are just not here or somewhere else. They might not be in this cache, they might be like in the whole Epstein files just Department already had, or maybe it's like that reporter just physically has it somewhere and like that conversation was finished offline. So it is a mess. We're going to see like different puzzle pieces, but it's just like random puzzle pieces, right? So absence of evidence here isn't evidence of absence. We're getting thrown a ton of noise and information, and making sense of it is going to take time. Next week, there's going to be a vote to release the Epstein files. I think Republicans are going to fold. Um, a few days after Trump's first inauguration on February 8th, 2017, Epstein, in conversation with Larry Summers, who was the Treasury Secretary under President Bill Clinton and former president of Harvard University, said, "Recall I told you, I have met some very bad people, none as bad as Trump, not one decent cell in his body. So yes, dangerous." In August 2018, Catherine Brumler, who previously served as White House counsel during part of President Barack Obama's administration, emailed Epstein a link to an opinion piece published by the New York Times that made the case for Trump's impeachment, following the guilty pleas of Trump's former personal lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen. "You see, I know how dirty Donald is," Epstein wrote to Rumler. "My guess is that non-lawyers NY biz people have no idea what it means to have your fixer flip." And in December 3rd, 2018 exchange over iMessage, someone whose name is redacted wrote to Epstein, "It will all blow over. They're really just trying to take down Trump and doing whatever they can to do that. The context of this message is unclear." "Yes, thanks," Epstein responded. "It's wild, because I am the one able to take him down." Jeffrey Epstein died under Trump's watch. Let's look up Costco. This is an important piece of the puzzle. If there is like a conspiracy here and not just the crime, um, this is an important part of it. Alexander Acosta gave Jeffrey Epstein a sweetheart deal during the Bush administration, where like Epstein had like a prison sentence and then like got out. Um, Epstein was given, relatively speaking, a slap on the wrist. Um, yeah, we'll just like, kind of read the Wikipedia articles. I feel like just evidence here is like the best way to do this, like external sources. In August 2007, Acosta's office entered in negotiations with Jeffrey Epstein about a plea agreement. On September 24th, 2007, Epstein signed a non-prosecution agreement a day before the prosecutor in the case was prepared to indict him. Over the subsequent months, Epstein sought to negotiate the terms of the agreement and pressured Acosta to remove Marie Villafaña, the prosecutor on the case. In 2008, as U.S. Attorney, Acosta approved a federal non-prosecution agreement with Jeffrey Epstein. The secret agreement, conducted without consulting the victims, was later ruled illegal by U.S. Judge Kenneth Mara in Jane Doe No. 1 and Jane Doe No. 2 versus U.S. for violating the Crime Victims' Rights Act. The 11th Circuit affirmed Mara's decision, but then sitting en banc revisited that decision and ruled otherwise. In Doe No. 1 versus United States, 749 F 3D 989, 11th Circuit 2014. And in February 2022, the Roberts Supreme Court decided to let that judgment rest. At the 2021 trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, prosecutors with the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York proved, in abeyance of Epstein's sweetheart plea deal with Acosta, that she was guilty on 5 counts related to sex trafficking. On 17th of December 2024, 3 judges at the Second U.S. Court of Appeals upheld Maxwell's 5 convictions and sentence. In response, her lawyer said in September 2024 that she would appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. Its decision in docket number 24-1073, which was renewed by her lawyer David Oscar Marcus on 28th July 2025, is expected after 29 September 2025. The petition tests whether an agreement by one federal prosecutor to Acosta binds his colleagues across the country. In March 2005, the Palm Beach Police Department began a 13-month undercover investigation of Epstein, including a search of his home based on reports that he was involved with sex trafficking minors. FBI investigation resulted in a 53-page indictment in June 2007. Acosta, then the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, agreed to a plea deal to grant immunity from all federal criminal charges to Epstein, along with 4 named co-conspirators and any unnamed potential co-conspirators. That agreement essentially shut down an ongoing FBI probe into whether there were more victims and other powerful people who took part in Epstein's sex crimes. At the time, this halted the investigation and sealed the indictment. So Acosta shut down the investigation into Epstein early. Epstein got away with a slap on the wrist. Like, it did not, they were like, hey, we're not going to look into this that deep. We're not going to go into all that. In 2017, Acosta was nominated for Secretary of Labor by Donald Trump. The guy who gave Epstein a plea deal and stopped the investigation into Epstein's co-conspirators was rewarded with a job in the Trump administration. This is corruption. This is corruption. Then Epstein died under the Trump presidency. Epstein died during the first Trump administration. Epstein died under Trump's watch before he could snitch. Epstein was under high security watch, so he was not supposed to be able to die or to kill himself. You can do that. You're supposed to observe people in the situations to make sure that they're not going to kill themselves. They can stop the investigation. He was a key witness, right? He died under Trump's watch. Under Biden, they had Ghislaine Maxwell and kept her alive, under security, under watch, and we're getting all these sealed private information. Typically, you don't want to reveal in a massive investigation like this for the sake of the victims. You don't want to reveal this information. It's usually used also as evidence. If those victims want to pursue their own trials and get justice, they want to have that. So if it be discretion is usually respectful and polite and practical. But yeah, but then Trump ran on these calls. I don't think Trump is really that creative, right? When he was like, what will people be upset about? He pulled from personal experience. QAnon and all that, you know, he stoked these flames of like, oh, what if there's actually like a pedophile conspiracy and we're gonna get them because that would be so gross, right? Where do you think Trump got that idea and started pushing it? Of all the things we met about, right? All the conspiracies we pick up, like, do we really think he's that creative and brilliant, or is this guy who's consistently been described by like everyone who's known him, by every teacher, by every business partner? He's not very bright or creative or good at coming up with new ideas. Just kind of thought of like that thing he knew about, that awful thing that happened to his best friend that he knew was like a big poster. Like it's just on the brain, you know, that's something like, oh, he was aware of. Oh, what people would be upset about? Yeah, like, hey, there's this like big crazy conspiracy. That there's a bunch of powerful men who are like pedophiles. It's a thing he knew about, and it's a thing he like limited uh the discussion of. Um, so that's that. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. The FBI this year in March was spending what was it, thousands of hours redacting Trump's names from files. Here, I have my hat. I'll wear my hat. He's on the list. All victims have not said Trump didn't do anything. That's not true. We know we know the victim he was supposedly spent hours with at Jeffrey Epstein's house. We know she killed herself after saying she wasn't suicidal. We know that. We know she killed herself after saying she was not suicidal and not going to kill herself. Let's look at one last thing for now. What's next for Congress and the push to release more Epstein files? The House is speeding towards a vote next week on releasing files related to sex trafficking investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, a step that comes after months of resistance from Republican leaders. Why are they resisting? Why are they resisting? Hi, everyone. Uh, this is a terrible website design. They have no choice but to allow consideration of the bill after petition on the measure reached the necessary 218 signatures. It comes at a time when new documents are raising fresh questions about Epstein and his associates, including a 2019 email that Epstein wrote to a journalist that said President Donald Trump knew about the girls. The White House has accused Democrats of selectively leaking the emails to smear the Republican president. Public speculation has been rampant for years about Epstein's operation, death, and connection to powerful and wealthy individuals, including Trump, former President Bill Clinton, tech billionaires, and celebrity academics, among others. Reps Ro Khanna, Democrat from California, and Thomas Massie, Republican from Kentucky, introduced a petition in July to force a vote on their bill, the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The effort was backed by all House Democrats and 4 Republicans, including Massie, and Reps Lauren Boebert of Colorado, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, and Nancy Mace of South Carolina. Minutes after Democrat Adelina Grijalva of Arizona was sworn into office Wednesday, she signed her name to the Epstein petition, pushing it to the magic number of 218, a majority in the 435 member House. Um, Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, said following Grijalva's swearing in that he would expedite the petition process, bring a vote on the bill to the House floor early next week. Johnson has pushed back on claims that he has obstructed the Epstein legislation to protect Trump or others. He told reporters Wednesday that the Republican majority took issue with the phrasing of the measure, which he claimed did not adequately protect victims. Johnson has also pointed repeatedly to the Epstein investigation being conducted by the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, which has resulted in thousands of pages of documents being released, including more than 20,000 on Wednesday. Best friends. What does the bill do? The bill would force the Justice Department to release all files and communications related to Epstein, as well as any information about the investigation into his death and in federal prison. Information about Epstein's victims or ongoing federal investigations would be allowed to be redacted per the bill. The department, however, would not be allowed to redact information due to embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official, public official, or foreign dignity. Isn't going to pass. Johnson, who has dismissed the petition as a moot point, said he will bring the measure to a vote next week. If anyone who signed the petition supports it on the floor, it will pass. Yeah, if everyone who supports the petition on the floor, it will pass. But the bill appears likely to pick up additional Republican votes, potentially dozens or more, now that it is moving forward. Rep. Don Bacon, Republican who did not sign the discharge petition, Nebraska, I think, has said he plans to back it. The tougher test will come in the Senate, where Republicans hold a 53 to 47 majority, and it would likely take 60 votes to move the bill to its final passage. Asked in September whether the Senate would take up the Epstein bill if it passed the House, John Thune from South Dakota said, "I can't comment on it at this point." This is John Thune. He's so good at hiding. Thune added that the Justice Department has already released tons of files related to this matter, but not all of them. Which ones wouldn't they release? Which ones would the Trump-owned Justice Department not release? Unless they had to. I trust them in terms of having the confidence that they'll get as much information out there as possible in a way that protects the rights of the victims, Thune said. Can Trump stop it? If the measure passes the Senate, it would go to Trump, who most certainly would veto it. He has opposed the discharge position from the start, even reaching out Wednesday to 2 Republicans who had signed it. The Democrats are trying to bring up the Jeffrey Epstein hoax again. He'll do anything to deflect and have the government shut down. Oh my gosh. Only a very bad or stupid Republican would fall into that trap. He knows he's lost them. He's turning on his own party. A president's veto can be overridden with a 2/3 vote in both chambers. That has only happened twice since 2009. Massey said Trump can avoid the entire ordeal by releasing all the Epstein files held by the federal government. There's still time for him to be the hero, Massey said of Trump. This is going to pass the House. It might not pass the Senate, but I think depending on how well it will pass the House, if that's a clear blowout and it's clear that the tides are turning, I think Republicans will get on board. I think lots of Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans will also get on board. If Trump has to veto this, which he would, no matter what, he would, that would be a death blow to this whole administration. Could the veto then be overridden? Possibly. But it's going to pass the House. And once it passes the House, the question becomes, why are you stopping the Epstein files from being released? And I think we'll see a lot of people ask questions. It doesn't matter who's implicated in this, but it's Trump. So that's where we're at with this. I am not going to stream tomorrow because I have to go to a funeral for my mom. It's been a rough month, but yeah. So I will try to stay updated. We post something a little bit about it on TikTok or whatever as we see what's going on. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I think it's good just going through these articles instead of just like the kind of noise of talking about it vaguely. Um, yeah, it would take 18 Republicans to override a veto. We'll see. This is a big one, and it's basically going to be a choice for a lot of Republicans about like picking between this current administration or their future political prospects, and we'll see, where they fall. But yeah, no, thanks everyone. Thank you. I will see you around. Yeah, if you want to support me, if you want a hat like this, I put a link in bio or in the description. Yeah, like cheeserightstore.com. I make fun merch and you can donate or whatever. But yeah, he's on the list. the hat that aged like wine.